there is a dread disease in which the struggle between soul and body is so gradual, quiet and solemn, and the results so sure that day by day and grain by grain, the mortal part wastes and withers away, so that the spirit grows light and sanguine with its lightning load. A disease in which death and life are so strangely blended that death takes the glow and hue of life, and life the gaunt and grisly form of death. A disease which medicine never cured, wealth never warded off, or poverty could boast exemption from, which sometimes moves in giant strides and sometimes at a tardy, sluggish pace. But slow or quick, it is ever sure and certain.
Of all the hardships faced by the pioneer settlers of Colorado, none were more feared than disease. Smallpox, diphtheria, pneumonia, typhoid, and malaria each claimed their share of victims. But the most ravenous of the killers was the White Plague. Telltale signs of this disease have been found in the ancient mummies of Egypt. The Greeks knew the ailment as phthisis, a word meaning to waste away. In the Middle Ages, it was known as King's Evil. Later, it was called consumption. We know it as tuberculosis. By the middle of the 19th century, it was estimated that worldwide 20,000 people were dying from consumption every day. Of the countless stories that might be told of the White Plague, there is one that remains hauntingly vivid despite the passage of time. We know that James Nimerik brought his family to the Greenland area of Douglas County in the fall of 1873. The 1880 census tells us that the family had one daughter named Nell. She would have been 9 when the family moved to Douglas County. It is entirely possible that she was already dying of consumption. The Nimeriks became a prominent family, often appearing in the newspaper's personal column. Nowhere in these stories or anywhere else in the official record of the time does it mention that young Nell had consumption. But the public knew of Nell's condition.
Well, there was a family by the name of Nimerik that lived at the south side of the Butte. And the story has been told to me, they had a daughter who had tuberculosis. And back in those days, there wasn't very much they could do for it. But she would go, I wouldn't say every day, but frequently, to the top of the butte and kept putting a few rhyolite stones on this pile of rock. Oh, as I remember, 10, 12 feet high. How she ever got all those top rocks on, I have no idea.
While the story of young Nell making her daily pilgrimage up the butte has an undeniably romantic allure, it only deepens the mysteries surrounding her circumstances. What was she doing here on the frontier? Why was the sick girl hiking up a nearby butte? And why is there no mention of any of this in a newspaper? Despite over 2,000 years of dreadful intimacy, in Nell's time, precious little was known about consumption. Ignorance and despair opened the doors to numerous elixirs, pressed upon the hopeless dying by men more concerned with lining their pockets than with helping the sick. Prestigious doctors, as ignorant in this case as everyone else, sent their patients west in hope that the high, dry air would miraculously cure the wet, blood-filled coughs of consumptives. They came to Colorado by the thousands. Huge wards called sanitariums were built along the Front Range. Thomas Gilbreth, a member of the One-Lunged Army, as consumptives were called, recorded his experiences in 1909.
What magic there was in that name, Colorado. To my mind, it was truly El Dorado. No matter how much I suffered from the thought that the bottom had dropped out of all of my years of planning, I never for one moment doubted that I was to be well.
Doctors encouraged their patients to get outdoors and exercise in the healing air of Colorado as much as possible. In accordance with the pervading medical advice of the time, Nell Nimerik made frequent expeditions up the nearby butte, hoping to rid herself of the demon infection spreading through her lungs. But as consumptives flocked to Colorado, the mood began to change. Where once they were welcomed by considerate hosts, by the end of the 19th century, they were seen as easy marks or worse.
Colorado was most glad to welcome the contents of the purse the invalid brings with him, but she would greatly prefer that the invalid should not accompany the purse.
As the disease triumphed over every cure put forth, new theories as to its cause were advanced. These hateful theories were aimed at the moral character of the afflicted. Too much alcohol or opium, too much promiscuousness on the part of women, women wearing lewd clothes or failing to ride side saddle. Even waltzing was suggested as a cause. Consumptives not only had to deal with their illness, but with the social stigma attached to their disease. So no mention of Nell's disease would be made in the newspapers. The consumptives became the lepers of their day. It was not a disease anyone wanted to hear about. And as the 20th century dawned, public outcry against those infected grew louder. It had been confirmed in the early 1880s that consumption was communicable through saliva. At the turn of the century, 1 out of every 3 people in Colorado was thought to have tuberculosis. In a time and place when disinfecting was not the order of the day, eating at a restaurant could be as dangerous as Russian roulette, with 2 of the 6 chambers loaded. How often could you play before you died? We don't know what happened to Nell Nimerik. By 1886, she was living in Monument. After that, she passes from our view. Sadly, the journey of those suffering from tuberculosis is not over. Today, drug-resistant strains of the infection are appearing. And the World Health Organization now believes that 1/3 of the world's population carries the disease. The majority of those infected are still left, like Nell Nimerik, to make their own journeys.